Hello and welcome to episode 122 of Magic Rays of Light, a podcast exploring the world of Apple TV and so much more. I am a very, very excited Sigmund Judge, and on the verge of WWDC, I am joined once again by my brother from another mother, Mr. Devon Dundee. How are you?
Hey Sigmund, I'm doing good. I am very, very excited for next week. I'm trying to rest up because I know it's going to be a busy and exhausting one, but I cannot wait for what's in store next week at WWDC.
Just very quickly, I want to get a check-in. Are you excited for WWDC? Where are you at?
I'm very excited. We hear a lot of talk about what's going to be announced, and we're going to get into that here in just a minute. I know some people are, maybe their excitement's a little dampened by the fact that AI seems to be a focus, but you know what? I'm going in with an open mind. I want to see what Apple's come up with. And you know what? I think they've always got some surprises up their sleeve. So I'm ready to see what those are too. How about you? Are you feeling excited?
I'm excited, but I've been practicing something all week. Something I practice normally, but even more this week. Putting out good energy into the world. And hopefully receiving it back when it comes to tvOS 18. Because we've gone through these kind of 2 yearly cycles before. I'm a little bit concerned, but I've had crystals around me all week. Whenever it's rained, I've done a dance. I'm feeling pretty good about that because I burnt off a load of calories this week. But yeah, I'm very, very excited. Now, we enter the final pre-WWDC week with anticipation, predictions, and more on this episode. And we'll find out what side of the Apple TV multiverse tvOS 18 lands on Monday. But before we talk about our very first step into the Apple TV multiverse, we got to play around in an established multiverse this past week on Apple Vision Pro. And we got to play around in this multiverse a few days earlier than everyone else. So a big, big thank you to Disney, Marvel, and ILM. We've got to check out What If, Devon. You got to step into the world of Marvel and into the multiverse. Your impressions?
Well, I have to say, this is a dream come true, Sigmund. I've always dreamed about being a superhero. You know, I always thought I'd probably want to be Spider-Man. I think his powers would work best for me and what I like to do. But you know what? Being the hero of the multiverse works as well. And you said that we stepped into the Marvel multiverse, but really what happened was the Marvel multiverse stepped into our world, right? I was just sitting in my bedroom, and all of a sudden the Watcher came in and told me that he needed me to come and save the multiverse. And of course, I stepped up to the challenge and had a great time doing it. Now, we knew going into this that the runtime was going to be about an hour. I feel like when we get these announcements about immersive content, we always get the runtimes now as well to kind of just establish what to expect and maybe start to set a baseline of what these experiences are going to last. And I thought an hour might be a long time to be spending in this world and to be playing around with What If, but honestly, it flew by for me. I don't know about you, but I finished up and I looked at the clock and I was like, wait a second, it's been that long? I could have easily gone twice as long. And actually, I did immediately dive back in because once you finish, you can actually go back and replay certain chapters if you want to. But it's called What If, an immersive experience. A lot of people have talked about this. It's somewhere between a game and a movie, but it's unlike anything that I've ever experienced before. You're watching these things take place in your environment, and then you're drawn into the fully immersive environment at one point, and then you interact throughout certain points where it actually depends on you to accomplish a goal, right, before you can proceed, which is, it's a lot of fun. It's low stakes, but it is a lot of fun too. I think the thing I love most about it, other than just getting to experience the multiverse and this Marvel world that I love so much, we're not going to get too much into the plot because we don't want to spoil it for anybody. But I think besides just being in that world and seeing these heroes that I love so much, the thing that I really enjoyed about this was the way they pushed forward with the motion controls with your hands and really used just a diversity of things you could do with your hands to make things happen. I don't know that we've seen the hand tracking on Apple Vision Pro get pushed this far before, and it really met up to that challenge, I think. You have to hold your hand a certain way to pull up your shield, hold your hand a certain way to collect stones. And then there's this whole motion you do with waving your arms around when you're about to defeat an enemy and you have to entrap them. You're a sorcerer training under the Sorcerer Supreme, and he's teaching you these motions. And if you've seen Doctor Strange, you know they do all this wild stuff with their arms, and you're actually doing that yourself. And so to me, that was actually the most fun, was getting to explore those motion controls. And I really feel like there's something there in terms of Apple Vision Pro gaming in the future, of really just pushing those motion controls, those hand movements as far as you can go.
The last Marvel film that I watched in the cinema was the latest Doctor Strange film, directed by Sam Raimi. There are certain moments in that film that are replicated here in regard to just like the transitions, actually, just from your real world to a new space. Really, really clever, really enchanting. And I've got to say, as someone that has kind of fallen off of the Marvel bandwagon, this has really pulled me back in, Devon. We were talking about this before recording, but Marvel Unlimited is going to be something I'm going to start a trial for before I get on my flight this week. Listen to some 90s pop punk and peruse the library of digital comics and kind of step into a time machine of sorts. Honestly, this was a really, really special experience. I do wonder where they could go from here. And what I would say is, I'd love for this to end up being a shared experience, one where we can work together and maybe form our own superhero clan in whatever multiverse we're in. And because of the whole multiverse idea, you could be Spider-Man, I could be Spider-Man. Spider-Man is my favorite as well, when it comes to Marvel at least. Where would you like to see this go? And do you think beyond this first immersive experience, if we'll see more?
Well, I love your idea of making it a shared experience and collaborative. And I really would like to see this extended into a game. I think that the mechanics they came up with here really could work for something longer form, not just an hour long where a lot of it you're watching. I think you could actually iterate on this and make it into something that would be more of a full game. Now, in terms of whether they're going to do more of this, I certainly hope so. I think they're going to have to start charging, obviously, for these experiences. This one's free, at least right now. I think at some point it might be tied to a Disney Plus subscription, and that might be kind of the move they're making, trying to get people in the Vision Pro onto Disney Plus. Regardless, I think this experience was high quality and positive enough, and it's gotten enough praise that hopefully they'll pursue it and see that there is some money to be made here, even as Apple Vision Pro rolls out across the world and becomes available to more and more people. Having this available is going to be a great way to show off what the Apple Vision Pro can do and what this method of storytelling could at least start and where it could go from here. So certainly hope to see more. I think they could make some money here. I would have paid, $20 or $40 or whatever to experience this. Having experienced it now, I would encourage anyone with an Apple Vision Pro to go ahead and download this app and jump into it. It is well worth the hour of your time that it takes. Well, Sigmund, now that we've saved the Marvel multiverse, what do you say we dive into the Apple TV multiverse and make our first stop at a new configuration that you've come up with? It's called Apple TV Go. I'm fascinated by this concept. Can you tell us more about it?
Absolutely. Well, this is a iPad Pro 11-inch modded in a number of different ways to run an Apple TV 4K through UVC, and it all runs via battery. This is a concept that I have been thinking about for many, many months, and actually first came to me at WWDC 23. It was my first dub. I was very, very excited, and whilst everyone was walking around with the first developer betas on their iPhones and iPads, little old me, every time I wanted to have hands-on with tvOS 17, I had to make my way all the way back to the apartment I was staying at. And tvOS is a very difficult software subject to talk about because there isn't particularly so much excitement about it. What I felt was by not having it in front of you, you couldn't really share ideas. You couldn't get other people excited. So this is something that I wanted to do, and I didn't even know was possible until iPadOS 17 and the developer beta, and the idea that UVC video, which basically allows for USB video class devices to be seen via a capture app. And whilst everyone's been playing video games, I've wanted to figure out a way of being able to power an Apple TV via USB-C and have this all in one hub that could attach to the iPad and then be easily torn off and stowed away safely. And I've done it all without a soldering iron, without a 3D printer, thanks to an incredible mod that is detailed in the article that's going to be available to read on Mac Stories later this week. What can you do with an Apple TV Go? I think that's going to be the biggest question that people ask. I can share tvOS with people, spark conversation. I can also make captures of tvOS or third-party apps via a little bit of trickery, and a lot more. I can share tvOS via NDI to an Apple Vision Pro. I've been doing that recently with an international rollout still to come for the Apple Vision Pro. There's had to be a way of me being able to get my local content on the biggest screen that I own. So that's possible. And we may have also been able to kind of trick the system into allowing us to share play literally anything via the Apple TV Go as well. And that's all detailed in the article.
Well, I have to say, I'm so excited to read your article, and I'm sure our listeners are as well. Hearing about just the concept, actually finding out exactly how you did it is going to be so exciting. But I do want you to just walk me through physically, hardware-wise, starting with the Apple TV. So you've changed the Apple TV to be powered by USB-C, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. And it is literally a 10-minute mod.
Wow.
Which doesn't need a soldering iron. You get all of the tools in the mod as well. It's pretty cool. I actually dropped one of these modded Apple TV 4Ks off to Federico whilst he was in London for the iPad event. And he sent me a message saying, this is really, really cool, but what do I do with it next? And I hope this is going to give him some ideas, and I'm sure plenty of readers as well. Then that Apple TV 4K is connected to a HDMI splitter, which is important for a number of reasons that we get into on the article. And then from the HDMI splitter, it goes to my Elgato 4KX, which is able to capture 4K 60 frames per second in SDR. And the limitation there is a iPadOS limitation. So fingers crossed we'll see something from our iPadOS 18 that's going to help with Apple TV Go getting to the next level. And then it's all just powered directly by a small USB-C hub that I found, and is all put together with Velcro. Honestly, I initially looked at magnets for this modification, and the weight that it was adding was something else. I have cleanly Velcroed my Magic Keyboard that houses the iPad, and so that's nice and soft to touch, and it's definitely furry, and I like it. But yeah, I like to kind of share these stories to inspire, because you end up finding little other things that you think, oh, why is no one doing that? And one of them is that I got the favored ESR case for the iPads that Federico likes to mod, and I cut the folding part and covered that also in Velcro. And now I've basically created a Magic Island system where I can have setups based on the different workflow that I might be in that can just attach to the back of the Magic Trackpad and have everything there powered via one USB-C hub. So even if you're not like a massive Apple TV fan, and if you're listening to this, I'd imagine you are, I think there's going to be some inspiration here from a number of different angles.
I definitely, when I saw the pictures that you shared with me of this, just started having a ton of ideas of different things I could attach to the back of my iPad with Velcro. And just like you said, create different setups. It really is incredible how much you're able to pack on the back of that thing and it still be mobile. And like you said, when you're done with it, if you just want to use your iPad as an iPad, it's Velcro. You just pull it off and you're ready to go. So if you see somebody walking around with what looks like an iPad and a Magic Keyboard case, but it's got an Apple TV attached to it, it's probably Sigmund. He's out there with his Apple TV Go, taking tvOS everywhere and fulfilling the dream of really being able to run tvOS on a mobile system, to be able to instantly check out those betas and apps. And when you're talking to people, show them ideas. I think this is so cool. Now, I do want to talk a little bit about how you're using it and the use cases. So are you actually watching TV with this setup? Are there things about this setup that would make it better for watching TV than the TV app on iPad?
I would say probably not, bar one thing, right? And that one thing is having a Siri remote for control. I mentioned it in the article, but I really miss Front Row, which got removed from macOS in, I think, 2011, which is actually not too far after I first started to get into macOS. The trick that's being played is you think you're controlling your iPad. You're not. You're controlling Apple TV and tvOS. And it got me thinking back to that rumor of tvOS running on an iPad-like device. I think it was an iPad mini that a rumor made reference to. I think even if it is just the TV app in a tvOS form, that would be really, really cool, like a return of Front Row. And also, I think the biggest thing that I loved about Front Row was that when you were done with your work for the day, your work computer didn't feel like your work computer anymore. You were allowed to unwind. And so you just got the remote out and you were able to control it like a TV and sit back and relax. And it's such a small detail, but I think it's something that after using it for a couple of weeks in that way, and I teased it just a few days ago on social media, it's a tiny detail. Otherwise, as I say, using it for capturing tvOS and other apps that are hopefully going to implement Apple's tools, I want to be able to document that and say, hey, thank you so much for actually going with those tools this time and, giving developers, big and small, the gravitas that comes with being one of the first. So that's how I'm using it. How I could use it in the future, there really are no bounds. At the moment, the biggest drawback, and we've said this a couple of times before recently, is iPadOS and some of the limitations. So one of the biggest things I wanted to do was be able to record Apple Music Sing sessions, and I had it already. It was going to be called Apple Sing Karaoke Capture. Right now, there's no way of being able to record audio from two sources, although thanks to Camo Studio, you can record two video sources. And when I'm at a desk, I can plug in an external Apple TV and another capture card, and then have two Apple TVs side by side for quick comparisons. So, this is a ridiculous concept. I get it, but we do this because we want to share ideas. We want to get people thinking. I think the biggest surprise here was how easy the mod was, but also how much space is actually in an Apple TV when you remove the power supply unit. And I'd love to see tvOS just come to more and more devices, have more use cases, and really kind of expand its horizons. So I've put that positive energy out there into the world. I feel like I stepped into the multiverse, came back with something from another dimension, and hopefully Apple will do the same this week.
Well, I just want to applaud you on this accomplishment, Sigmund, and recommend everyone, when that article does come out, check it out and learn more about Apple TV Go. This is such a cool concept that you've put together, and honestly, I just can't wait to hear more about it. Now, you mentioned what Apple's going to do this week. I think that means it's time for us to start making our predictions for what's going to be announced at next week's WWDC keynote. Now, we're changing up the format of our predictions this time around. Is that right?
We are. We have 3 rounds this time, and on the 3rd round, our listeners are going to join us.
That's exciting. Well, this first round, we're calling these our easy picks. They're worth 1 point each. We're calling them easy because we're allowed to guess things that might have been rumored or things that are just kind of floating out there. Not too much of a stretch, not too risky. But don't worry, we'll get to that here in the next round. For my first easy pick, Sigmund, I'm going with one that's evergreen, but I really think it's going to happen this year. I believe that apps and widgets on the home screen will be able to be placed arbitrarily on iOS 18. No more being stuck to the grid, no more having to build down from the bottom left. You're just going to be able to place your widgets and your apps wherever you want. Make a funny butterfly pattern if that's really what you want to do, or use your pets to make funny patterns like Neely Ann's been doing on her iPad. I love those pictures that she's sharing. I think we're all going to be able to do this soon with iOS 18, and that's my first pick.
It's going to be an absolute mess, isn't it, Devon? Honestly, there is something that's grating me at even the thought of this, but I think it is coming, and I'm sure someone will come up with a good use case for it. From apps and widgets on the home screen to my first prediction, and that is that Apple TV software will include per-user home screen management. I just feel like this is something that has been a long time coming. If we don't get much from Apple TV and tvOS this year, I think this is going to be the thing that we do, or at least I hope we do. I don't know if I'm playing this game that well so far this year, actually, talking about it.
Well, like you said, putting positive things out in the world, Sigmund, you got to believe they're going to come back to you. So I think as far as tvOS picks, this is really low-hanging fruit. One of those easy wins that if Apple does this and not much else, they can still get a lot of love from the tvOS community, and something that I know you and I would both benefit from greatly. So that's a great first-round pick. What have you got for round 2?
All right, Siri will read messages from loved ones in their personal voice.
Oh.
This kind of came to me this week. I was thinking about how Apple could humanize artificial intelligence and do something fun. I did think maybe we'll get some choices for famous voices. And then I thought, oh no, that's kind of flying a little bit too close to the sun after the whole Scarlett Johansson and OpenAI debacle.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it would be really cool, actually, to hear a message come through on your AirPods from a loved one and it be their voice. And of course, that would only happen for people that signed up for personal voice via iOS earlier this year. I think there's something in it. It's maybe not an easy pick, but again, it's a pick that I wanted. And these picks, again, they're worth 1 point. So in a weird way, I'm kind of reversing it and going with my risky ones, at least in my brain.
Well, I definitely like the way you're thinking here. This would kind of follow Apple's playbook sometimes when it comes to accessibility features. They discover new uses for them that might have wider appeal. And I could definitely see a scenario where you're given the option to generate your synthetic voice on your device with those prompts, and then your phone could, go ahead and read your text messages in that voice and send those out. It might be a good alternative to people who love to send voice messages. I know a lot of people have really gotten into those. This would be a way of doing that just with text, though. So I could definitely see this, and I think Apple could do it in a privacy-conscious way, and I could see people getting really into this. My pick for round 2, I'm also going to go with one about AI and Apple's voice assistant, which I'm not going to say right now because I don't want my HomePods to go off. But I think that the assistant will gain the ability to have context-aware conversations. So this is something I've wanted for a long time. When I ask for something and then I try to do a follow-up on that conversation, the phone just loses any concept of what I'm talking about, right? There's no memory of what we've been discussing. And so what I'd like is the ability to have ongoing conversations where if it gets something wrong and I need to correct it or ask a follow-up question or whatever, that we can just have that conversation and not lose the context of it. This is something that with modern AI, ChatGPT, that kind of thing, they're very good at mimicking conversations, and they're using some tricks to do that. But I think if Apple's going to apply LLM technology to Siri and the voice assistant there, that this would be a good application for it. Just be able to have some conversations, have it remember what's going on, and respond accordingly.
I love it. I absolutely love this. What is your third and final pick for round one?
This is maybe a little bit of wish casting, Sigmund, here, and it might even be one that I predicted in the past, but I'm just going to put it out there and believe it's happening this year. Support for simultaneous audio sources will come to iPadOS and visionOS. Now, of course, we've talked about this in the context of podcasting, being able to record your voice while being on a call. This comes up all the time. If you're listening to a podcast on your iPad and then you click play on a YouTube video, well, your podcast stops, even if that's not necessarily what you were wanting. And it happens on visionOS too, which is even more bizarre because you got your windows spread out everywhere and you have to go back and find the one where you accidentally started something you didn't mean to, right? So I think that the connection between these two platforms, it'll come to both of them at the same time, and it'll enable, on visionOS, it'll enable being able to have just multiple videos or audio sources playing at the same time. On the iPad, it'd be great for creativity and podcasting especially. So I think it's going to come this year.
I really hope it does, purely on what we were trying to do the other day, which was share a NDI video that was being streamed from the Apple TV Go into our space. Mm-hmm. So, yes, as much as I don't want you to get the point, I want us to get the feature. My third and final pick for this round is that the coming soon environments in visionOS will be available in the first post-WWDC developer beta. And a side note on this, and not a pick, but I think is probably more interesting than the pick itself, is that I think this year we're going to see visionOS environments open up to developers and have developers be able to share those environments across apps. There's some incredible work on display when it comes to environments, but they're locked to a specific app, so they kind of bear no fruit and aren't really useful in any way. And I'd love to do my work or even edit a podcast on the Avengers Tower.
Yeah, just look out for that watcher. Don't get roped back into some multiversal battle. But yeah, for sure, I would love the ability to use third-party environments with multiple apps and have those coming soon environments show up so that they aren't those weird little circles on my home screen that I can't do anything with. So I think it's going to be a fun update for visionOS. Hopefully there's a lot there, but especially when it comes to environments, we'll be looking out for some updates. And you know what? I'm just going to root for you to get this point, Sigmund, because as you said before, I don't want you to get the point, but I want the feature, so I'm going to root for it. Well, that brings us to round two. We're going to be sharing two difficult picks each, kind of up the difficulty level here. We've agreed beforehand that these are what you'd call difficult or risky or whatever you want to call it, but these are picks that are going to be worth 3 points each rather than the 1 point from round one. I'm going to let you go first, Sigmund. What's your first round two pick?
Apple announced automations based on ultra-wideband or other precision technology. I think it's time. I think this is, again, a human element of artificial intelligence that hasn't really been taken to the level that I think we expected it to. These things often kind of just get honed and developed in the background for many, many years, and then they finally come. You're excited just because of how slick and well thought out it ends up being. So yeah, ultra wideband or other precision technology for automations. I do think this WWDC is going to be a big one for the home.
Yeah, I sure hope so. UWB has so much potential. And Apple's been putting it in so many devices that you've got to believe there's something coming there. We've got so many UWB chips in our homes now, and then we've got them on our wrists and in our pockets. Let's start linking those up and doing some fun stuff with them. Yeah, I completely agree. We were just talking about Vision OS and how I hope it's a big year for Vision OS, so I'm going to put out there some of the things that I'm hoping to see. And I'm making this one difficult just by listing so many things, Sigmund. I believe Vision OS 2 will feature a revamped notification system, an app switcher, and the ability to group windows together and switch between groups. So these are some aspects of notifications and windowing that I think just didn't make it into the first version that, I think that they're on the roadmap and need to be there for the long term to have some better productivity and window management, and especially notifications. The notification view in Vision OS is very basic and not something that I enjoy using very much. So I think that if we could get a revamped notification center, something a little easier to manage, and then a better way to manage our windows, group them together and switch between them, I think that would go a long way towards quality of life for the operating system and really moving it towards something that more people could use easily and get a lot of things done with.
Yeah, I think, and I like the fact that you bundled everything together, because if one thing doesn't show, you don't get the point. But I think everything that you're talking about makes perfect sense, and I would be shocked if we don't see it. Will we see Vision OS 2 so quickly, considering we only got Vision OS 1 in February? That's going to be an interesting point of contention, I think. But yeah, I love it. Round 2, second pick for you, Devon, before mine. What have you got?
I'm going to go against some rumors here. I want to talk about the hardware limited features that are said to come at WWDC this year, and I'm actually going to push back against some rumors about what devices will be able to run these hardware limited features. There's been some thoughts going around that only devices within the past year or so are going to support all of the features, and I don't see Apple limiting their devices in that way. I feel like they're going to find a way to make these AI features work on more devices. And so I'm going to say that hardware limited features will be available on devices with the M1 chip, A14 chip, and later. And so I'm going back to the Apple Silicon transition and the accompanying iPhone chip that came out that year, that they were kind of, developed in tandem, and the M1 was based on the A14. And I'm just going to make the bet that Apple will want to keep compatibility back that far and not burn any bridges when it comes to people who've made that Apple Silicon transition already. Now, if I'm wrong and these features do get hardware limited to newer hardware, it's going to be okay, because the rumor is that those features will then just get pushed to the cloud. So you still get them, it'll just be slower, kind of like Siri on the Apple Watch for me on a Series 7 is slower than on a Series 9 because it's having to do more cloud processing. That'll be okay. I really think from just a PR marketing kind of point of view, they really want to include the entire generation of Apple Silicon and not cut off anybody who's bought an M1 Mac.
I love this pick. And one of the things that you said kind of tied in with a tvOS wish from App Stories this past week from Federico and John, and the idea of an Apple TV caching on a network and using some of the gigabytes that are otherwise unused. And I wonder if Apple Silicon could kind of make a similar play for older devices as well in your home. That, I think, could be something that Apple could do. I was really, really buoyed by the idea that Federico had, because we've been talking about a shortcut server for a long, long time on this podcast as well, which is very similar. But yeah, I love this pick purely because I think there are other ways rather than just saying, no, you don't get it, go and sit in the corner. I just don't think that's the way Apple do things, especially when something is so important in their pipeline and across their product range.
So that was my last pick for round 2. What have you got?
I've got something slightly simpler. And I think I say this every other year, and I really think this could be the year for it, because it's been a number of years since the announcement of AirPlay 2. I think we're going to get HomePod Home Theater expanding with the announcement of a successor to AirPlay 2. What that expansion is, I do not know. Of course, I don't know if it's actually ever going to happen. But my feeling is that the successor to AirPlay 2, or an expansion of it, will allow for AirPlay 2 speakers to be able to become permanent home theater speakers. And maybe, just maybe, we'll see multi-audio setups that aren't just synthesized Atmos and actually true Atmos, just wireless. That would be very, very cool. Because the Atmos name is starting to kind of dwindle in significance because it's being put to everything. Sound bars, TVs, kitchen radios, I think, So I would really love to see this, and that is my pick. That HomePod home theater expands with an announcement of a successor to AirPlay 2.
Bring it on, I say. You said it could be a big year for the home. This would be huge, and I really hope to see it. All right, time for round 3. These are our bonus number rounds. There were 2 points each. We've got 2 questions here, and we'll alternate on going first, because I think that gives us the other person a little bit of an advantage in these number games. So, Sigmund, how many new changes do you think are going to debut for tvOS 18 this year?
Interesting. We are not talking the keynote, but we're talking changes in the beta, right? In the actual tvOS Developer Beta 1 for tvOS 18. I am going with... And I said I was going to be positive at the beginning of this episode. But I need these 2 points, Devon. I'm going to go with 9 changes across the OS this year.
Oh, wow.
I've been stung a number of times. I need to reserve myself a little bit and have myself prepared for a quiet tvOS this year. Because the other side of things is, tvOS 16 was very, very quiet, right? The initial release. But then we got a ton of features throughout the year. I think that might be what we're seeing again. And I think you should completely ignore me because it might be a game plan. I may be tricking you, Devon.
Wow.
So my pick is 8. 8 for 18.
8 for 18. Okay. Oh, that's tough for me because I actually think that's a pretty high number when it comes to tvOS. I mean, we think about last year, which we would think of as a pretty big year for tvOS. And it was huge changes, but those changes were all kind of clustered around, like, I would say maybe 5 or 6 bullet points that you could make.
Sure, but I can think of 5 changes just to Control Center last year.
Okay. That's a good point. I was thinking of Control Center as like maybe 1 or 2 bullet points, but if you really dig down deep, you're right. You really could get into, accessibility shortcut and stuff like that. And so you're right. Well, in that case, you know what? You've talked me into it, and it may have been your game plan, Sigmund, but I'm going to go higher. If you go 8, I'm going 9. And I think we're going to have more than 8 picks. I think we're going to have more than 8 new features for tvOS this year. And we're just going to keep those positive vibes going. We're going to keep putting it out there. It's going to be a big year for tvOS.
I hope so. Well, that was a difficult one. That actually took us a little while. Our next number pick is an interesting one. And I'm going to ask you the question. And of course, you have to go first because I went first on the last question. And that is, how many times will Apple mention AI or artificial intelligence during the opening keynote?
This is really hard, and it's really hard to estimate based on, of course, there's always these supercuts of the keynotes of how many times AI is said, by Google and Meta and whoever else, and it really makes it feel like it's like hundreds. I'm going to say if the keynote's going to be between an hour and a half and 2 hours, I'm going to say every 3 minutes or so. So let's say 35 times.
Okay, 35. That's higher than I thought you were going to pick. But I'm gonna I'm going to up the ante here. And I'm going to say 46 times.
Oh, okay.
I think you have to kind of hit this home. Artificial intelligence or AI, right? It can be either one. And I think we can do that within, 2 hours? I think it's like normally about an hour 45 for the keynote. I know last year was extra long because of a new platform being announced. So I'm going to go with, what did I say?
46.
46.
All right.
46 AIs or artificial intelligences. I think that sounds good.
Well, I mean, Apple's been saying it a lot on, investor calls, and, it was even in the tweet from Jaws when they were announcing the event, a little hint about AI there. So you're probably right, actually. I think I may have gone too low, but you know what? Our picks are locked in, and it is what it is. But we're not the only one playing this final round of the game, right, Sigmund?
That's correct. Of course, we want listener participation on these 2 picks. And you can, of course, send those picks to magic@macstories.net. The closest on both predictions will win a movie of their choice from the TV app. And just to recap you, those 2 questions are: how many changes will debut for tvOS 18 in the first developer beta? And how many times will Apple mention AI or artificial intelligence during the opening keynote of WWDC? I am so excited for WWDC and the opening keynote, which will happen at 10 a.m. Pacific on Monday, the 10th of June. I'm excited to be in Cupertino for the developer conference, excited for the conversations that we're going to have and the ideas we're going to be able to share. I'm just very excited, Devon.
Yeah, we're in for a fun week, and I absolutely can't wait to find out which of our predictions come true, and of course get together next week to score our predictions and see who wins. In the meantime, how about we cover some of this week's news, Sigmund?
Let's start with Mark Gurman, who reports that Apple is currently seeking engineers to bring the TV app to Android phones. In addition to that, there was also another Apple TV mention from Mark, which made headlines, mentioning in his post-game question and answer session of his Power On newsletter that an Apple TV hardware refresh now isn't imminent. Whilst that makes me a little bit disappointed in some ways, because I was hoping we'd have a hardware story at the end of the year, I'm kind of buoyed by it as well, because it means that if there are resources for Apple TV this year, they will have been flooded into the software story of tvOS 18. So I'm excited to see what we get hardware-wise in hopefully the near future, hopefully Q1 of 2025, which still feels like a futuristic year from a different galaxy, even though we're in 2024.
Well, Sigmund, there's always a silver lining. So if we don't have new hardware, hopefully we'll have lots of software to talk about. This news about Apple TV coming to Android is interesting. I think that's the biggest platform that doesn't have an Apple TV presence. Of course, if you want to watch Apple TV Plus on Android, you can in the browser, but I have heard actually a lot of people who subscribe to Apple TV Plus but use Android phones and want a better way to access it. It's on Windows, it's on Google TV, it's on obviously Amazon TV and Roku and all kinds of other platforms. So I think this move into Android is good, and anything they can do to help get Apple TV Plus in front of more people I think is a positive move. So removing that barrier of having to go to the browser, being able to download it from the App Store, and just having one more place for the Apple TV app to exist, I think that's great. Speaking of expanding the TV app, Wayne Mott, The Information, reports that Apple began talks last year with China Mobile to launch Apple TV Plus in China. The status of these talks is currently unknown, but if a deal were to go through, it would make Apple TV Plus the first US-based streaming service available to the Chinese market. So this is interesting. It's just conversations. As far as we know, there's no talks of an actual deal being signed or this actually happening. But I think this is another way that Apple can kind of leverage their relationships in China and maybe try to get Apple TV Plus in front of some more eyes. And of course, that would be a huge potential user base of people to subscribe to the service. I think this would be a really big breakthrough if they're able to do it. At the same time, we don't know how those conversations are going, what kind of concessions might have to be made on the content side in order to get it into China. But yeah, very interesting that Apple's working in this direction. And if they're able to do it in a way that wouldn't be limiting or constraining to the content and the people who make the shows and films for Apple TV Plus, I think this could be great.
I think the more eyes that you can get on Apple TV Plus and Apple original films and series, the better. I would also be interested to see what could possibly come out of the Chinese market in regard to TV shows and films. And I'd like to see what could be developed and brought over to the West. I think that could be really interesting as well. One thing that has been bothersome over the last few months, and we called it out, as has a number of people, including Joe Rosenstiel, and that is the YouTube screensavers on Apple TV hijacking our Apple TVs, taking away, in a sense, our beloved aerial screensavers and kind of replacing them with what look like AI-generated images. Well, this is stopped, thankfully. As reported by Joe Rosenstiel, an update to the YouTube app server side saw screensavers disappear from Apple TV. The idea apparently was that there could have been some kind of marketing and advertising placement that would have gone in place of these screensavers at some point. That was something that they had been looking into, according to some interviews previously with some executives over at YouTube. I'm just really, really happy to see this go, because I was sick having to limit my personal screensavers to just 2 minutes. Mm-hmm. So I'm all the way back up to 10 minutes now that I don't have to do the 2-minute workaround. Interested to know, what is your preferred time before your aerial screensavers kick in?
Well, I love my Apple TV screensaver. I actually have it set to pictures of my son. Honestly, I have it set to 5 minutes, but I've already built the muscle memory of when I'm done watching something, I go back to the home screen and hit the back button and it instantly starts it, because I just love having it. So it doesn't really matter what I set it to, because it's always there anyway. I love my Apple TV screensaver. Moving to a different app on Apple TV, Netflix will drop support for the second generation and third generation Apple TVs on July 31st in a move that the company says will help maintain the best possible Netflix experience. Now, to be clear, these devices that we're talking about are the devices that came out before tvOS ever existed. So if your Apple TV runs tvOS and is running the tvOS version of Netflix, you are totally fine. This is back in the days when Apple TV ran a version of iOS and the Netflix app came built in. This is way back in the day. I had a second generation Apple TV and it came with the Netflix app. I actually signed up through the Netflix app on my Apple TV and continue to pay for Netflix through my iTunes billing. I love that those two things are so connected in my mind, but to be honest, I'm surprised that Netflix is still supporting that app after all this time. I can't imagine watching Stranger Things or some newer Netflix content through that app. Apparently, though, some people are still using it. tvOS came out in 2015, so I imagine most of those devices are no longer in use. But if you are still using a second or third generation Apple TV, just be aware that Netflix is no longer going to run on it after July 31st.
I will be taking screen captures for prosperity, I think. And maybe we'll talk about those in a couple of months' time. Now, of course, subscriptions, they keep going up and up and up. Netflix are known for it. So are Macs, so they wouldn't dare do it again, but they have. Macs have announced a price increase. Not for next month, no. Effective immediately, the standard ad-free tier will increase from $15.99 to $16.99 per month, whilst the 4K ad-free plan will increase from $19.99 to $20.99 per month. The standard ad-free plan will rise from $149.99 per year to $169.99, whilst the 4K tier will go from $199.99 $99.99 to $209.99. And lastly, the ad-supported Max plan, which Max want you to use because they don't care about Dolby Atmos. They just want to give you the worst experience possible as long as they can give you ads. And I can't imagine how an artist or a director or someone that is involved in producing films or movies for them could be happy with any of this. But as long as Warner Brothers Discovery get their $9.99 per month or $99.99 per year out of customers whilst also being able to generate advertising revenue, I think they're happy. Rant over.
I love your rant, Sigmund. I love anytime we talk about Max because I know you're going to bring it up, as you very well should. I got my email notifying me of this price increase as we were recording, so I will be paying my extra $1 per month. All I can say is bring on that Disney Max bundle because I'm going to be signing up for it day one to save a few bucks on my Max subscription for sure. We have a couple of VisionOS apps we wanted to highlight this week. 2 popular VR games from Alchemy Labs are now available on Apple Vision Pro. Those are Job Simulator, available for $19.99, and Vacation Simulator, available for $29.99. Those are huge games in the VR space. Very exciting to see them come to Apple Vision Pro.
Interested to see that Vacation Simulator is $10 more. I guess more people want to go on vacation than they want to go work. I know that both of these games are very, very popular. They are really like the definitive games when it comes to VR. I think anyone that is even slightly keen on VR or AR has heard of both. I have not played either of these ever, so at some point I will be purchasing them and experiencing it. Moving swiftly on, Jared Norwell released Folium, which is a Game Boy Advance, Nintendo DS and Nintendo 3DS emulator on the App Store for iPhone this week. Of course, you can AirPlay your gaming exploits over to Apple TV.
This one's interesting because it's the first emulator we've seen on the App Store that can emulate the Nintendo 3DS. Now, what I've heard is that, of course, Apple does not allow developers to use just-in-time compilation, and so emulating the 3DS without that can lead to some performance issues, and so it's kind of hit or miss what kind of experience you're going to have with that, but it's cool to have access to those games on the iPhone as well, and really just great to see more and more emulators coming to the App Store.
Interested to know, would an iPhone be able to simulate the 3D from a 3DS? If not, are there any plans to bring this to VisionOS for that 3D simulation?
Now that is an intriguing idea. I would love to see it come to VisionOS for that 3D simulation. I don't believe it's possible on the iPhone, but all of those games included 2D versions as well because Nintendo obviously didn't require you to play in 3D and actually sold hardware that played the games only in 2D as well. So I believe you're only playing in 2D and not getting that effect.
Talking of effects, this has a great effect on me this week. Kino, a new iPhone videography app from the makers of Halide, is now available for iPhone, and John Voorhees' first impressions will be linked in the show notes. This app is a pro camera, but something that I feel like any person could pick up and really get used to. And as much as we've been fans of the Blackmagic camera for iPhone, it is quite complex, right? There's a lot going on there, and I think unless you've used a Blackmagic camera or really know that ecosystem well, it's quite confusing. This pro camera app called Kino really focuses on... Actually, focus is a big part of the app, and being able to pull manual focus. This is, let's say, it's a pro camera app, but it also feels like a starter app because it is so inviting.
I haven't tried it myself, but looking at screenshots and looking at John's video that he posted showing off the different color grades that you can get in the app, it looks really impressive. Of course, Halide has a rich history on the iPhone of being a very both approachable but also customizable camera app, and so that really does carry over to Kino as well. Very cool to see that now available on the App Store. hitting the App Store just today as we're releasing this is the new version of our friend Roman's media tracking app, Sequel. This is version 2.3. It comes with several updates that we wanted to highlight, including personal notes of what you're watching, reading, or playing. And those notes include Markdown support as well. So if you like to write with Markdown syntax, you can do that. This is going to be great for just writing down your reaction to certain films and shows, or keeping track of your progress and resources in games. This is an addition that I think is going to be very useful for a lot of people. The one I'm most excited about is Shortcuts Actions for Sequel, the ability to look up and change the state of items in your library with shortcuts. I've been testing this and having a ton of fun with it. It's something I've wanted in Sequel for quite some time, and it's very, very well implemented. If you're a shortcuts user and you use Sequel, you definitely want to check those out. Magic Lookup is an intriguing use of AI that's been added to Sequel. You send titles via the share sheet from a web page or selected text on your device, and the app will detect titles and show them to you in a Sequel UI. This is very cool. What I've been using this for in my testing is when I'm reading Apple PR's press releases for Apple Originals, I will go ahead and share that link to Sequel to make sure that I have that show or film in my library. And if it's not there, I can add it right from the share sheet. Very cool, and lots of different use cases you can use with Magic Lookup. There are also new layout options in your library and the ability to search your library, so some kind of quality of life improvements in addition to these awesome new additions. If you're a Sequel user, be sure to update to 2.3 today. If you haven't tried Sequel, check it out. We'll leave a link in the show notes.
One item in this list that I'm very, very happy about specifically is personal notes with Markdown in Sequel, because I'm more of a note taker, but I know, Devon, you're more of a journal writer, and you've got some integration that I think is really, really fun that you're about to drop for Watch History Journal 2. Tell us a little bit about this.
Right. I've talked about it before on the show. Watch History Journal is my shortcut for journaling about the things you watch. Unfortunately, Apple's journaling suggestions don't recommend titles from the TV app, which is very strange to me. But that's okay, because I've come up with a solution in the meantime. Watch History Journal has traditionally relied on your tracked data to log what you watch, but thanks to Sequel Shortcuts Actions, it can now use Sequel as a source instead. So with Watch History Journal 2, which is available today, and we'll link it in the show notes, you can now choose your source. You can choose to use tracked, or you can choose to use Sequel. And for those who use Sequel, you'll get all the same abilities that you've had before with tracked, to add those titles to your journal, to write about them, and to have these images that match what Apple offers with journaling suggestions in your journal for the TV shows and films that you watch. Now, that was what I was planning to release with Watch History Journal 2, but once I got in there and started playing around Sigmund, I couldn't help myself, so I had to take it even further. So even if you're a tracked user and you're not going to be switching over to Sequel with Watch History Journal, there's still something in there for you as well, because I've added what I'm calling advanced options, and these are methods for changing the journal entry generated by the shortcut. And so what you can do is you can actually open up the shortcut in the Shortcuts editor and scroll down just a little ways, and there's a box called Advanced Options, and you just put an X next to the ones that you want to use. And there's different options there. You can set it to only save images for posters instead of making those journaling suggestion style images that it usually generates. You can set it to pull yesterday's history instead of today's, if you're someone who maybe likes to journal in the morning and you want to catch your data from yesterday and start thinking about it. There's a bunch of different options in there. I won't go over all of them, but I've just had several requests and things that I personally wanted to be able to do with the shortcut that I couldn't do before. And it makes it optional in a way that if you're just using it out of the box, it works just fine. But if you want to tweak it a little bit, maybe take a look at those advanced options and see if there's something in there that might catch your attention.
Okay. So as a journaler, which I am not, what are you using these advanced options for?
Well, the one that I use the most is called Text List. And what this does is it creates a bulleted list of all the episodes and films that you've watched in a day underneath the images. And what I'm using this for is to make it searchable, because the images don't have OCR on them. I don't know if that's possible in Shortcuts. I don't believe it is. but basically now I'm generating the images and the text so that I can make it searchable as well. And that's just another option that you can have in there if you'd like that. I'm just a big believer in reflecting on the things that we watch and what they make us feel and think about. And so that's what Watch History Journal is for. And if you're interested in it, we'll link it in the show notes. Check it out.
Another app that released this week is noteworthy for a number of reasons, and that is the third-party HomeKit app Controller for HomeKit, which has added a new feature called Floor Plan, enabling users to take a 3D scan of their home and use it to create a floor plan mapping out their home and the location of their smart home devices. This is something that I know is going to have some really interesting use cases. It's been such a long time since I've actually stepped into home automation and Apple Home, because really there hasn't been a lot new in terms of automations and what can be done beside the integrations with shortcuts, which don't work all the time. Devon, is there something specifically that you would want to do with the floor plan mapping in Controller for HomeKit?
Well, it's interesting that this happened this week because we just shared our wishes for tvOS over the past couple of episodes, and one of them that I shared was using the Apple TV as a dashboard for your home status. And actually what I had in mind, I thought it was too far-fetched to actually put down in a recording, but what I had in mind was a floor plan of your home and just, little symbols for what's open, what's on, how things are doing. I think that would be incredible on your TV. As happens a lot with home automation, a third-party developer has come in and done something that I think Apple should do and taken it even further. So I love this concept, the idea of having just a visual floor plan of your home that you can quickly glance and see what's going on and make quick changes. Turn on a light here, turn the temperature down there. I think for a lot of people who think more in that spatial sense rather than in a vertical scrolling list like you get in home, I think this could make so much sense. So the implementation of the 3D scanning and then combining that with your home data, it's just so smart. And that's why I thought we definitely needed to shout this out this week. I haven't had a chance to try it myself, but I'm so intrigued with the concept, and I think it's well worthy of being done and something I hope that Apple will do one day. A lot of app recommendations this week, Sigmund. We'll link all of them in the show notes so people can go check those out. But let's get into some Apple original news, starting with trailer talk. This week we got a slew of trailers. We got a trailer for Camp Snoopy, which debuts next Friday, June 14th. And we got the first trailer for Land of Women, an upcoming bilingual series that I'm very much looking forward to. A New York socialite is forced to flee a charming Spanish wine town with her mother and daughter. She finds herself navigating small-town quirks while also confronting her deepest family secrets and a pair of bumbling hitmen.
My name is Gala Scott, and my life was perfect.
Your husband running a little late, huh?
Oh, you're the caterers. How much do I owe you?
$15 million.
Until my husband skipped town with all of our money. Mamá, vamos de excursión a tu pueblo en España. No tenemos casa y mi coche está roto. I hate this town. Sigo sin saber dónde está Fred, pero lo voy a solucionar.
A great trailer. This stars Ava Longoria, Carmen Mora, Victoria Bazua, and Santiago Cabrera. Yet again, a bilingual series spoken in both English and Spanish, so following hotly on the footsteps of Acapulco. But a different feel to this one, Devon.
As we've been talking about this series, as it's been coming together and in production, I had a lot of trouble imagining what it could be, how it was actually going to feel to watch it, but I think this trailer gives us a really good idea. Now, of course, it's a very serious situation that this woman's found herself in, running away from the mob because of some trouble that her husband has got himself into. But I think the series is also going to have some fun elements to it as well, kind of a little bit of a quirky family road trip vibe. And I think that that's a great addition. Of course, the bilingual element is always welcomed as well. And being shot in Spain, I think we're going to see some beautiful places in addition to it. So I'm looking forward to Land of Women. Premieres on June 26th with its first 2 of 6 episodes. But that's not all we got this week in terms of trailers, Sigmund. We also got the first trailer for Wonla, which is coming on June 28th, and the highly anticipated first trailer for upcoming Apple original film Wolves.
George Clooney plays a professional fixer hired to cover up a high-profile crime, but when a second fixer, played by Brad Pitt, shows up and the two lone wolves are forced to work together, they find their night spiraling out of control in ways that neither one of them expected.
Who are you?
I'm here to take care of your problem. Who called you?
We clearly have a situation here. We have decided that the only course of action is for you both to work together.
No. It's not how I work. This is not how I work. Where'd you get the drugs? I don't know what you're talking about. Where did you get the drugs? Talk. There's an art to this you may not realize. What, the art of saying the same thing over and over? Let's see your technique. I showed you my luggage card trick. Admit it. It's cool.
This is written and directed by John Watts. I hadn't really heard the term fixer beyond putting together IKEA furniture, maybe a plumber, maybe a cleaner. But George Clooney and Brad Pitt definitely aren't playing those type of fixers.
No, this is more the fixer in the Breaking Bad kind of sense. The guy who comes in after something terrible has happened and cleans up. I don't know. This is another one that we've talked a lot about that we didn't really know much about other than, of course, who was making it and that very short log line about two fixers assigned to the same job. Having now seen the trailer, Sigmund, is this what you were expecting out of this combination?
Absolutely not. As I say, I thought it was about handymen, genuinely. I don't know why. This kind of took me to a different place. I got to say, I love the dark humor. It has a bit of a classic vibe to it. So very, very much looking forward to Wolves. WOLFS. When it hits theaters on September the 20th.
Sticking with release news, we found out this week that the highly anticipated second season of Pachinko will make its global debut on Friday, August 23rd on Apple TV Plus, with its first of 8 episodes and air through October 11th. A first look at the second season alongside its new opening theme will be linked in the show notes. I'm so happy that Pachinko is coming back, and on August 23rd, I will be so excited to dive back into that world. This particular release news doesn't necessarily apply to you and I, Sigmund, but I thought it was worth sharing. Apple original thriller series Liaison will air on French linear network TF1 on a non-exclusive basis as part of its second window sold by distributor New and Connect. We talked a while back about how some of these Apple original series were being shopped around for second windows on linear TV. And so if you're in France and you haven't seen Liaison, it might just pop up on your TV before long on TF1.
In production now, Spike Lee revealed on Instagram that filming for his remake of Akira Kurosawa's High and Low, starring Denzel Washington, has wrapped. And in a world exclusive for Magic Rays of Light, we've got some news regarding Silo. Not the news you may have heard earlier this week, but some fresh news with regard to Season 3 of Silo, because it will begin pre-production in Hertfordshire, England this October, which has me very, very excited for, first off, a third season and no doubt a fourth season based on the books and what has been said, a couple of months ago now by Rebecca Ferguson, which we reported on this podcast at the time. I am super, super excited about this. The first season was incredible. I cannot wait for a second season, which I would imagine we'll see in the fall months. That would tie in really nicely with any kind of breaking news that may be put out by Apple PR with regard to Season 3 kind of being out there and official as being in production. But yes, Season 3 of Silo will begin pre-production in Hertfordshire, England this October. That is what I call an exclusive, and very, very appreciative of our sources, our British sources. And talking of which, Devon, before we get into Silo and how excited you are, have you ever tried brown sauce?
I have never tried brown sauce. I've never heard of brown sauce. but I'm intrigued just by the question. So what is this exactly?
Brown sauce is HP sauce. It is a mixture, but it's vinegar based from what I can remember. But I literally have brown sauce on everything, right? Highly recommend HP sauce if you ever get a chance, Devon. I may have to ship you over a bowl. But getting back to Silo, are you excited?
Oh, I'm very excited about Silo. I'm happy that they're going to be making a season 3. I think it was kind of expected based on how well season 1 performed that they'd finish out the series, but the fact that they're going to go ahead and start season 3 before season 2 has even been officially released is a good sign. And I really just can't wait to see season 2 when it finally does come, hopefully in the fall. We do have one bit of casting news that we wanted to share this week. Mariana Trevino has joined the cast of Price Cahill, the upcoming Apple original comedy series starring Owen Wilson as a washed-up ex-professional golfer who takes on a new protege. Cool to see that series continue to grow its cast and move towards production. In awards news, this week Apple revealed the Apple Design Awards finalists. I like that they've been putting out these finalist award lists the past couple of years. Of course, the Apple Design Awards will be announced next week during WWDC, but it's just a cool moment to see the apps that made it all the way to the finals and get to celebrate them. There were several Apple TV and Apple Vision Pro apps that made the list that we wanted to shout out. In the Delight and Fun category, What the Car from Tri-Band and Hello Kitty Island Adventure from Sunblink are finalists. In inclusivity, they include Quadline from Kovalov Ivan and Crayola Adventures from Red Games. In interaction, there's Crouton from Devon Davies. Very cool to see an indie app make it into the finalists. And Finity from Seba. In social impact, Cityscape Sim Builder from Magic Fuel made the finalist list. And then there's a new category this year segment called Spatial Computing. Very, very cool to see that. And the finalists there were Sky Guide from Fifth Star Labs, the NBA app, DJ from Algorithm, Synth Riders from Klug Interactive, Black Box from Shapes and Stories, and Luna Cozy Puzzle Game from Luna. Congratulations to all the finalists, and best of luck next week.
Some familiar names on that list. Very, very much looking forward to seeing Devon again in person. A real long trip that he has, especially flying all the way from New Zealand to California. Quite the trip. Now, this week's Apple TV releases begin actually last week on Friday. Frog and Toad Season 2 made its premiere. A charming, beautiful second season of the animated kids and family series. Highly recommend checking it out. I think we may have even had a bit of a sing-along to the theme earlier this week via a YouTube video, but we'll get into extras in a moment. This month also saw a new batch of limited time movies for the month of June in the US, and they include Dune, Bad Boys, and Kingsman: The Secret Service. Just a couple of days ago, it was the 2nd of June. And I loved this meme that I saw, which was June 2 rather than Dune 2. Very, very clever. Of course, we'll leave a link to the full collection in the show notes. Some others that I think should be worth highlighting. You've got Mail, which is a classic that I like to watch on flights, and Easy A. So they will both be downloaded on my Apple Vision Pro before my flight on Saturday. Today, though, we see the penultimate episode of the Big Door Prize alongside new episodes of Dark Matter, Acapulco, and Trying, followed by a Thursday of game releases, starting with Assassin's Creed Mirage on iPhone 15 Pro, iPhone 15 Pro Max, iPad Air and iPad Pro with the M1 chip or later. You'll get a free 90-minute trial, and then it's $49.99 to unlock the full game. But if that's all a little bit too much, you do have some incredible Apple Arcade releases this week. Rabbids Legends of the Multiverse is an all-new adventure card battler where Rabbids have been set loose across the multiverse, another multiverse, Devon. And that's followed by the return to Monkey Island Plus, the follow-up to the legendary adventure game The Secret of Monkey Island and Monkey Island 2, LeChuck's Revenge, where you solve puzzles and explore the islands with a clever evolution of classic point-and-click adventure game controls. And then we have Tomb of the Mask Plus, which is a devilishly fast tomb raiding platformer game with an eye-catching retro style. And lastly, Fabulous, the Wedding Disaster Plus, a wedding-themed time management game, which honestly just sounds insane. I need to check this one out for sure, and I think this will be one that I will share with my mum. Fabulous. Wedding Disaster Plus. I actually think from the whole list that is my highlight now, beyond Assassin's Creed. But is there something that really stands out for you this week in the gaming releases?
I've always been intrigued by the Rabbids. I've never played one of their games, but something about their personality and style just appeals to me. So seeing them on Apple Arcade, I'll have to give Legends of the Multiverse a try and see what kind of trouble I can get into with the Rabbids.
Well, Thursday we'll see you get into it with the Rabbids, and then hopefully Friday you'll all be settled down for the penultimate episode of The Big Cigar, followed by Friday Night Baseball, which sees Minnesota Twins at Pittsburgh Pirates at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, followed by the Los Angeles Dodgers at the New York Yankees at 7 p.m. Eastern. One I highly, highly recommend people tune into. That is a big, big matchup. Finally, on Saturday and Sunday, MOS Season Pass continues, and then, of course, it's the big one. Monday, Apple's Worldwide Developers Conference, kicking off with the opening keynote at 10 a.m. Pacific, available to stream not only in the TV app, but on YouTube, on Apple.com, and in the newly updated developer app. But remember, if you're watching within the TV app on any of your compatible devices, whether you're at home on an Apple TV or at work on your phone or iPad, you'll be able to check it out also in spatial audio and 4K high dynamic range. After the keynote and the State of the Union is over on Monday, be sure to keep an eye on Mac Stories for all of your coverage of WWDC on Monday and throughout the week. And if that wasn't enough, because it is a stacked week of releases this week, we have some extras, Devon.
Do we ever have some extras for you, Sigmund? Today is World Running Day, and Apple is issuing a challenge. Anyone who completes a 5-kilometer run can unlock a badge in the fitness app and some iMessage stickers. So if you've got an Apple Watch and you feel up to doing a 5K today, you can unlock some nice goodies there. To get ready for WWDC, there's a new Apple Music playlist called WWDC 24 Hello. Kind of get you in the mood, tide you over as we get ready for next week. You can also check out Reese's Book Club, which has officially found its audiobook home at Apple Books. This month's pick is The Unwedding by Ali Condi. We'll leave a link to the new hub for Reese's Book Club in Apple Books in the show notes. In terms of video extras, this week on YouTube, Apple TV released Michaela J. Rodriguez's Loot Behind the Scenes vlog. They've been doing some of these from different shows, and I really enjoyed them. There's also Vico on the Street, where Vico Escorcia goes around the set of Acapulco, quizzing cast members about the show. That one's very funny as well. And as you mentioned, Sigmund, we can all sing along to the Frog and Toad theme song on YouTube via the link in the show notes. You also mentioned this before, but we wanted to be sure to shout out this week's episode of App Stories, where Federico and John shared their watchOS and tvOS WWDC wishes. Some really intriguing tvOS wishes there. If you enjoyed our lists, be sure to check those out. They also announced 2 new podcasts that have come to the Mac Stories family of podcasts. Those are Next Portable Console and Comfort Zone. Next Portable Console is hosted by Federico John and Brendan Bigley. They're going to be talking all about portable gaming and the games that we take with us. That first episode is available now. Be sure to check that out. Comfort Zone is hosted by Neely Ann, who listeners will remember from appearing on the show before, as well as Chris Lawley and Matt Birchler. Really cool combo of hosts there. They're going to be talking about different things that they're trying out in their tech stacks, pushing themselves outside of their comfort zone, and each week they're going to issue a challenge to each other to carry out throughout the week. So if you're feeling up to it, you can also participate in the challenges as well. The first episode for that one comes out tomorrow as this episode releases, but you can go ahead and listen to the trailer and subscribe to that one as well.
Yeah, a huge congratulations and welcome to all of the new members of the Mag Stories team and the new podcasts. I'll say the first episode of Next Portable Console was one that I really fell in love with because I am also a Vita boy. Now, last week saw the season finale to the second season of Loot. I'm so sad that the season is over so soon. We'll get into that in a moment. But season 2 did kick off a year after Molly Wells settles her very public divorce from tech billionaire John Novak, and we find her thriving in her role as the head of her philanthropic organisation, the Wells Foundation. Focused mainly on her charity work, Molly has sworn off any new relationships with men and embarks on a wellness journey.
We, ridiculously wealthy people, are the problem. Starting today, I'm going to give away all my money, all 120 billion.
Molly Wells is here to talk about her new housing initiative, Space for Everyone.
We are on a real mission that is going to help a lot of people.
I want you to get everyone into the conference room for a, like a group talk session, like...
Are you trying to say the word meeting?
Yes, that's it. That's the word.
This is a show that season 1 I actually rewatched on my way back to California last time to kind of prep for this, and it's a show about a bunch of people that I just want to spend more and more time with. And friend of the show, James Lees, made a really great point in our group chat, and that is that really we need to see the return of a 22 episode season. Yes. From back in the day, rather than a 10 episode season. And I totally get where James is coming from on this one. 10 episodes of Loot Season 2. It just wasn't enough, Devon.
It absolutely was not enough. But we're going to recap those 10 episodes because we did very much enjoy them. So if you haven't seen it yet and you don't want it to be spoiled, this is your opportunity to go ahead and skip to that next chapter so you don't have anything spoiled for Loot Season 2. Now, regarding Loot Season 2, Sigmund, of course, a big theme of the season was romance and Molly's hesitation to open herself up to that world again. She goes on this wellness journey, but of course, with her, everything's got a little bit of a twist to it because her whole perspective on the world is just very different from ours, being a billionaire. And so I loved seeing her try to kind of, get herself right after her divorce and get back to a place where she could find love again. That was all very much enjoyable. But I have to say the highlight of the season for me was actually the romance between Sophia and Isaac, who's played by O.T. Fabinier. First of all, I just love him as an actor and everything that he does, and I love that we're getting him on Loot, and then he's also going to be on Presumed Innocent on Apple TV+, so we get him back-to-back, which is wonderful. But just seeing Sophia, played by Michaela J. Rodriguez, start to show a little bit of vulnerability, start to have a little bit more of a private personal life. We didn't get a lot of that from her in season 1. She's very much focused on the work, devoted to doing things the right way by the book and just being very professional. And this season, we really got to see her kind of break down some of those barriers and just fall in love, right? I love that so much. I loved the journey that we went on with them, where, of course, someone like that, it's a struggle to trust someone else and really let go of control. And so we really see Sophia go on the full journey there where she gets to the point where she feels like she can't continue on with this relationship and actually breaks it off and then realizes that actually he is the person that she wants to be with and gets back to him. I loved that whole arc. I love just seeing that side of her. And of course, we get that sweet, happy ending between the two of them where she has to go to his jazz show and stick around for like 3 hours to spend time with him. Oh, man. I love that so much. Everything about that storyline just was lovely to me. And really, it just brought to me what's so great about Loot, where it's funny, but it's also just heartwarming too, and in a way that I think is different from other shows that we've seen on Apple TV Plus. And so I think that gets down to really the characters and the way they're portrayed by these actors, and really just seeing them on those journeys. I love to see it.
Yeah, I like how this show has a way of making you smile, but also gets a little bit into the depths of your psyche when you're watching it, in terms of, missed opportunities, I think, especially in that particular storyline. But I also think the same when it comes to Molly and her hesitation to open up herself to romance, and almost see her miss her moment.
Yeah, I think we've all been there, right? You're heartbroken and you say, I'm never going to do that again. I'm never going to let somebody do that to me. And you close yourself off for a time. And then eventually, in a lot of situations, you eventually meet someone who you think, okay, maybe I would like to try this again. And we really see Molly wrestle with that, with her relationship with Arthur, to the point that she doesn't quite miss her moment, but I think in a way it's very much in limbo where she is with Arthur. You can tell that his feelings for her are still there. He spent the entire first season, kind of pining after her, and they kind of had that will they, won't they, and that continued this season, but Arthur now has a girlfriend, and that kind of complicates things, right? And so Molly finally gets to a point where she's ready to give this thing a try, but Arthur is he's an upstanding guy. He's not someone who's going to step out on somebody, and he's got this other relationship going on. And so that's actually really where we end things with Molly. But that gets me into my desire to see a season 3 of Loot. I really hope the show continues, because I love where they ended it with Molly storming onto her plane and just telling Nicholas, I don't care where you take me, just take me somewhere. And so it actually gives a good ending for his storyline as well, where he's been kind of coming to terms with his heritage and kind of his lack of connection with Korea, and because he's an adoptee and someone who doesn't really have that connection. And so this is his opportunity now to go back and visit and maybe try to not only have a career there, but also just kind of explore that part of himself. But really, I can't wait to see what happens when that plane lands, because I feel like it could either be very good or very bad, depending on how Molly's attitude is when she lands down in Korea. So I really hope we see a season 3 and get to see what happens at the end of that plane ride.
Yeah, I think the one thing that I was probably maybe a little bit concerned about, and why I felt that the season was too short with 10 episodes, 10 incredible episodes, is that there was just so many open-ended storylines that I wanted resolution in one or two of them at least. There's a lot going on here, as I say, very, very funny, but yeah, Loot season 2 got deep.
It really did. The other big storyline that's left hanging that I'm interested to see how it ends, of course, is Molly's relationship with other billionaires now. She's kind of gotten herself into trouble with a cabal. We saw at the end of season 1, she decides that she's going to give away her entire fortune. And the great thing about that is in season 2, we actually see her do it, right? She buys up a hotel and just opens it up for unhoused people to come and live in and learn and really get themselves back on their feet. And we see what I think is, of course, it's a fictional portrayal of how to do this, but it's inspiring to me that, like, yes, if people believe in this and will sign the checks, we actually could start changing things for people, right? And she really tries to take her initiative nationwide by recruiting other billionaires and ends up really ticking off some very powerful and rich people. And that's another storyline that was just left open-ended. So I think we've got to get back into that, that dark room with the masked people all surrounding her and see how she contends with those folks as she's trying to convince them to give away their money as well. So you mentioned that the series really asks questions about our emotional lives and our decisions there, but it also asks some questions about, wealth inequality and what the responsibility of people who have more is. And, we see some of the pushback in this season. So that's a storyline I'm interested to see as well. So as you said, a ton happening in Loot. If they want to double the episode count for season 3, you know what? I wouldn't mind. I would love to see more of Loot and spend more time there. But regardless, I would say season 2 is a winner and definitely worth watching.
Absolutely. Of course, you can check out Loot, both season 1 and 2, in full, now streaming across all of your screens on Apple TV+. Now, of course, we end each episode with our Up Next picks, Devon. This week is no different. What have you got for us?
Unsurprisingly, this week, I'm bringing the new Star Wars series on Disney+. It's called The Acolyte, and it debuts today. It's the first live-action title that's set during the High Republic, which is the golden era in the Star Wars history before the Skywalker saga. So we're actually exploring a new part of the Star Wars timeline that we haven't seen portrayed before in live action. This is actually an era that they've been exploring quite a bit in books and comics and children's series for a while now, but I'm excited to get to see a series set in it. So it's not connected to any of the characters that we know. It's all new characters and people that we're going to be meeting for the first time, but it's very exciting to explore that era. It follows a former Jedi Padawan reuniting with her mentor to investigate a crime spree, and they end up unearthing a dark side plot. So this is a point in Star Wars history where the Jedi are very much in power, but I think this is where we're going to see the Sith start to kind of come up out of the shadows and start to oppose that and set things in motion towards what we see in the original Star Wars film. This series stars Amandla Stenberg, Lee Jung-jae, Carrie-Anne Moss, and others. And if you're a Star Wars fan looking for something a little bit different time period, completely disconnected from the Skywalker saga, I highly recommend checking out The Acolyte on Disney+. I know I'm very, very excited to check it out today as it debuts.
Very, very cool. I think another one for the flight, Devon, for me, including some TV app highlights this week. One that we've been waiting for so long, and out of nowhere, Godzilla Minus One is now available on VOD and Netflix. I believe number 1 on the iTunes store as well as Netflix, which is a rarity these days, but it's made history. The black and white version, Godzilla Minus One, is also available in VOD as a separate purchase, but in HD, which is disappointing because I was really looking forward to checking that out as an extra. Maybe it will still happen. We'll see. My up next picks, however, begin with a film blog. A film blog that I think really kind of scratches my itch as a sports fan, and that is Balls on Film. It's a new newsletter on Substack from our friend and previous writer at Screen Times alongside us, James Lees. It's a publication about sports movies, and who doesn't love a good sports movie or sports-themed television show? James is just a really, really interesting and easy person to read. Now for my TV up next pick, and that is Am I OK?, which premieres June 6th on Max. It stars Dakota Johnson, who of course last year we saw in Cha Cha Real Smooth. This time playing alongside Sonoya Mizuno as Lucy and Jane, who are best friends most of their lives, and they think they know everything that they need to know about each other. But then Jane announces she's moving to London, and Lucy reveals a long-held secret. This is like a typical kind of easygoing indie film with a real heavy emotional plot line and some laughs along the way. There's good reason for this pick, and it's for about 10 seconds in the trailer where dating is compared to ice cream, Devon, and Dakota Johnson's character Lucy retorts, "Ice cream is different than vagina. Otherwise it would be called Vagi-scream."
And on that note of wisdom, we're going to go ahead and end this week's episode of Magic Rays of Light. Thanks so much to everyone for listening. Of course, we always welcome your feedback, so be sure to follow us on Apple Podcasts. Leave us a rating and review there. You can contact us on social media via the links in the show notes. You can email the show or send us an iMessage to magic@macstories.net. Be sure to be on the lookout for Sigmund's write-up on Apple TV Go on macstories.net. It's going to be an exciting read, and I'm really looking forward to it. I think you're going to very much enjoy it. Of course, we'll be back next week with our WWDC recap special. So until then, stay safe, watch some Apple TV, play some Apple Arcade, and enjoy WWDC.